Alright, so let me paint a picture for you. You wake up tired and are already feeling behind in your day, but with no energy to get things done. You have goals and dreams your heart aches to give time to, but you just don't have time right now. You need to get to work or school, and while you're there, you just want to get done so you can pick up some food, lay in bed and binge Netflix or scroll on social media. You didn't smile or laugh much in your day, you just got it done so you can get to tomorrow, where you repeat the same endless loop again and again. You wonder, is it just me that feels this way? I feel like we all have times in our life where we're just feeling down, or we're just feeling like, man, this isn't how it's supposed to be. I'm not feeling right. Obviously, nobody wants to feel this way, and when we are feeling this way, we just want to know what to do to get out of this funk. And that's the purpose of this video. I have identified 4 specific things that are usually going on in my life that are leading to my unhappiness. And when I change those things, it's like the sun coming out on a gray and rainy day. All right, the first thing I identified in my life that was robbing me of joy and leaving me unhappy was the feeling like I had to get to a certain place in life before I could be happy. I'll just give you an example very quickly. Right now, I'm in school pursuing my PhD in order to become a professor. I would like to be a professor of philosophy one day in a university. Obviously, that's a long, long road, and I can find myself at times just trying to get through the work so I can get to that ultimate goal of being a professor. But obviously that's years and years of stuff. I heard Jordan Peterson speaking recently, and he said that humans are constantly in a state where they're sacrificing the present for the future. And then I thought to myself, if we're always sacrificing the present for the future, then we're always missing out on life. We're gonna miss out on everything. Believe me, I get it. We all have goals and dreams that we're striving after, and that's a very good thing. But that doesn't mean that we can't enjoy our life and the adventure along the way. So I challenge you to give yourself a break and don't always anxiously pursue the next thing and the next thing, hoping once you get this job, once you get this relationship, once you get to this place in life, then you'll be happy. There's plenty of things, I'm sure, if you can look back on, if you can just think right now, that you can be grateful for. Okay, so the second thing that I noticed that was stealing my joy and stealing my happiness in life is what I like to call the ideal versus real dilemma. And here's what I mean by this. I noticed that there was a growing dissatisfaction in my life as I compared it to an ideal situation or a perfect situation that I had in my head. One example of this was in my relationship. Obviously, you read books about good relationships, you see relationships on movies and on social media, and you think that, oh, it's gotta be this way to be perfect. And then you look at your own life and you say, man, this relationship seems to be hard. It seems to be taking a lot of work. Maybe this isn't the right person. And so you leave that person and you go search for the ideal person, someone that is going to fulfill that ideal. But then you get there, and after the fuzzily, tingly feelings go away in the beginning of the relationship, like they always tend to fade to do, then you are like, this is not the right person. So you got to go search after the next person and the next ideal. But realistically, this is just chasing after a fantasy. It's chasing after like fog. It's like trying to catch mist. And I think that was causing so much dissatisfaction in my life. And when I said I'm going to forsake an ideal for something real, then I found so much more satisfaction in my relationship. And it reminds me of a quote that I heard that says, a good marriage is not found, it's forged. And I think it's like that in any place in our life, whether that be a relationship, your job, your fitness goals. It applies to anything. Forsake the ideal for what is real. Don't just get caught up chasing mist in a fantasy land. Okay, those were the first 2. And now the third thing that I realized in my life that was robbing my life of joy and happiness was being self-absorbed rather than others-focused. There's this quote by a scholar named C.S. Lewis who says that humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. And this quote has really, really stuck with me because I noticed the times in my life when I'm feeling the most dissatisfied and the most down is when I'm just so focused on myself. Another good example of this is in relationships. At least my relationship has taught me so much, but I noticed that when I was feeling the most dissatisfied, I was just thinking about myself. I was just thinking about the ways in which this other person wasn't doing the things that I needed them to do for me, or the ways in which they weren't meeting my needs. And that was just causing so much internal dissatisfaction that was robbing the relationship of joy. So obviously this wasn't working for me, and so I decided to follow the example of the person who is my leader, which is Jesus Christ, who came not to be served but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. I decided to follow his lead, and instead of seeking to focus on my needs and the way they weren't being met, I said, why don't I just go seek to serve her? Let me just serve her the best that I can. And you know what? Oh man, I felt so much freedom. The freedom that comes from breaking the shackles of pride. Obviously, if humility is thinking of yourself less, pride is when you're always thinking about yourself. And I think that I was and can tend to be a prideful person that is always self-absorbed. But the joy and lighthearted happiness that comes in my life is always in an environment in which I am serving others, not just in relationships, but serving my parents, serving my friends, serving strangers. All right, so that brings us to the fourth and final thing for the video today. I think that the final thing that robs people from the happiness they could be experiencing is that they struggle to find meaning in life. I genuinely think that our happiness is strictly tied to knowing and experiencing and carrying out our meaning in life. Like I talked about in my last video, which was titled The Meaning of Life, humans can't help but have that question well up deep inside of them. Every human person has the experience of desiring to know the meaning of life. Until then, we will just be wandering around in the dark, confused, without direction, which makes sense in light of a quote from an ancient thinker who says that God made us for himself, and we are restless until we find our rest in him. And so if you feel lost or confused about that question right now in your life, I would ask you to consider watching my last video on the meaning of life to continue to wrestle with that question and hopefully get some answers that are helpful. So that's what we do on this channel. We talk about all of life's big questions that come on your mind and my mind. Questions maybe like how to be happy, how to find freedom from stress, what is the meaning of life, questions about God, everything like that we're talking about on this channel. And so if you find yourself questioning those topics, consider subscribing to the channel. That way you can follow along the journey. So in summary, over the past few years, I have identified 4 things specifically that were robbing the joy and happiness from my heart. Those 4 things are: 1, feeling like I can't be happy until I get to a certain position or place in life that I'm striving after. It's good to have goals and dreams, but it doesn't mean that I can't be happy along the way and enjoying the adventure and having gratitude in each day. The second thing I noticed was that I was searching after and always trying to get an ideal at the sake of pursuing what is real. And so once I said, I'm going to forsake this fantasy mist of an ideal for what is real in my life and be happy and grateful for it and work to make it better, then I found true joy in life. Which brings me to the third point, which I noticed that I was most unhappy when I was self-absorbed rather than others-focused. Instead, I sought to serve others rather than be served myself, and I found true joy and happiness. And the last thing is that I genuinely, truly didn't experience joy and happiness until I was able to find an answer to what is the meaning of life. And so I recommend you all, if you haven't yet, to watch my video on the meaning of life to hopefully get an answer to that question. And if you haven't, then the next thing you could do is watch the video I'm going to make next week on how to be happy, to go dive into this question even further to give you more answers to how to get out of a rut that you might be feeling in right now, or just how to experience more happiness in general. Okay, I'll see you in the next one.